Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Carson Partners, a division of CWM, LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors. This is The Way to Wealth, with host Scott Ford, a jiu-jitsu fighting, woodworking, beekeeping entrepreneur who is also the managing director, partner, and wealth advisor of Carson Wealth. Financial freedom is the goal, and clarity and simplicity is how we'll get there. Let's get to it. This is Way to Wealth.
Hello, and welcome back to the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple so you can focus on living fully and doing that now, not 30 or 40 years from now, because today is what we have. So let's do it. I could not be more excited for today's podcast. With me, really, who probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it so you have a little bit of the story. I take the whole show just sharing about these two amazing human beings, Mark and Crystal Hansen, and you'll know a little bit of the backstory as far as I think it's the best-selling book of all time outside of the Bible. Let's just sum it up like that. What more needs said? So chicken soup for the soul, on and on. Most recently, and what we're all three most excited to share today, is Crystal and Mark's new book, Ask, and they also created a publishing company. So I couldn't be more excited. And one of the things as well, I know you had put a book together on give and tithing, and I have read that. And so I definitely want to put a pin in that and make sure we talk about it because it's just serendipitous, our timing to be on the podcast today. I'm working on book number 4, and we worked on this Sunday at the house. And literally what we were talking about was, what's the economy from a money perspective? What do we need to do? We need to create a new one, and going from scarcity to abundance. And to do that, you got to heal trauma, because really we want to get back to the gift economy, which is in scripture and all kinds of other ancient texts. So I want to put a pin in that because literally I just spent all day Sunday writing book number 4 or working towards it. And we were talking about that. So first of all, welcome to the Way to Wealth podcast, Mark and Crystal.
Thank you. So happy to be with you, Scott.
We love entrepreneurship, where you take a problem, fix it, scale it, and become massively successful. So you've got time freedom, money freedom, relationship freedom, and purposeful freedom, all the stuff that you are endearing to, we're endearing to. And it all comes out of knowing how to ASK to GET, the good that you want.
I love that. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I'm actually even working towards, Mark and Crystal, is just redefining in some ways entrepreneur, because it can even have a stigma and it shouldn't. It's like, if we can be like nature has showed us and creator has showed us, is showing up in reciprocity, like showing up to serve and to give, period. And I know you both believe that because I've seen it in previous works. The rest takes care of itself versus showing up to profit and what I can extract, but showing up to give and reciprocate. So would love to certainly hear more about new book, Ask, and the principles in that, and definitely want to spend some time about money and giving and the law of reciprocity.
Absolutely. We're here for it.
Beautiful. Let's talk about Ask. What's the purpose of this book? And I like to even ask it, I'll ask it this way. Why this book? Why right now?
Well, we've been blessed to travel to 80 countries, talking to 7 million people around the world, and we find great people everywhere, nice people, well-educated, pretty good attitudes. But the difference between somebody who succeeds a little, Scott, and somebody who's vastly successful is one thing only. They learned how to ASK to GET, all the good that they want. And what we want to do is have everyone learn from us to become master askers. And let me go one step further. We believe at birth we're coded with a DNA and RNA to ask, to go do something wonderful and great. And what happens is most people never ask themselves. They go get a JOB, which means they're just over broke, rather than a real MBA, a millionaire's bank account.
I gotta dig into this one piece. So you said DNA. So let's talk a little bit about the code at birth. And to give you a little of the backstory here, is this is where I come from on this. So one of the things we talk about is wealth DNA, financial DNA, or investor DNA. And so I know I shared a little bit before we hit record of getting real clear of who we are as a family, getting real clear of who we are as a company, and then having that money match that unique value system of both. And one step further, because we didn't talk about this, but part of what I talk about is we all have our own unique DNA sequence of who we're created to be. and let's use money to support that. So and by the way, part of that is healing ancestral DNA trauma and then creating success for, as the indigenous taught us, 7 generations to come, to set them up for success. So I'd love to dig a little deeper in that DNA you mentioned.
Well, I want to back it up a little bit, Scott, and just talk about how we all, when we come to this earth as children, the way we're made so beautifully by our Creator. We come to this earth as these perfect little uncorrupted askers, and we emerge and we're not afraid to ask for anything. First of all, we're wildly curious. We want to know everything. We want to know who, what, when, where, why, how. But we're also not afraid to ask for what we want and need. We're not afraid to go, can I have more? Can I have more? And that is our natural DNA. That is how we were coded to want more. That is how children evolve so quickly, right? We grow so quickly. We evolve so quickly as children because we have this beautiful innate curiosity that was built into us. This sort of entitlement that says, I have this ability. We recognize we have this ability to go out there and pretty much create anything because we are created in the Creator's image. So that's not even a mystery to a child. But then depending on how we were parented, what happened in our school years, the parents say, I'm tired of hearing you ask so many questions. Be quiet. I don't want to hear it anymore. Sit down. Don't raise your hand unless you're called on. And, maybe you go start in your job, in the job world, you're employed, your opinions aren't valued. And suddenly that beautiful thing we were all born with just gets crushed out of us. That ability to ask, to be wildly curious. And suddenly what we find is, we see people standing there pretty much ashamed to not already have all the answers, right? So they're afraid to ask, afraid to wonder, and terrified of being rejected, terrified to ask for help or assistance or guidance. And so our goal with this book is to really wake up what was already given to you at birth in your DNA, that beautiful ability to ask and wonder and expand yourself and keep evolving in this lifetime, because that is what you are here for.
Yes. And yes. Why do you think that is? Why do you think because one of the things I was going to ask is what happens to that ask? And you shared it. It gets squandered from in school. It can get pushed down. In parenting, it could get pushed down. In our peer group, it can get pushed down. And I wonder why that is, what the root of that is, and then how do we keep it from getting pushed down? And you shared some of that, but would love to understand that even more.
Boy, you couldn't ask better questions, sir. We say there are 7 roadblocks to asking, and every one of us has one or more of them at any given time. A sense of worthfulness, naivete, doubt, procrastination, right? All that kind of stuff. I won't go into each one, but the point is when you read somebody else's story, like Bob Proctor, came through the Depression. He was a great friend of mine. I owned 2 companies with him, but he had no real business sense. His parents, he was a single mom. So he saw nothing but lack and privation. And then he has a little job doing no money, making $4,000 a year as a fireman and going and drinking every night and owes $6,000 and feels worthless. Looks around one night and it comes to him, holy cow, I'm going the wrong direction here. So he goes to the richest guy he knows and says to Ray Stanton, who's also a friend of mine, says, what do I do? He says, well, look, what you're doing clearly isn't working. So read Think and Grow Rich. You and I are going to go over this again and again and again. He's read it every day until he died at 87, and I just did his eulogy. But the point is, he changed from being worthless to worthful, building $1 billion company, doing amazing stuff. And what we're saying is that at DNA, every one of us has got that infinite inside us. If Genesis 1:26-28 is telling the truth, and we think it is, and you think it is, you're here in a Creator's image to create, to contribute, and then to be charitable. Now, very few people think about the 3 C's that are right there in bold print. But when you start to do it, you say, well, wait a second, what did you do? Well, look, I sold 500 million books. I've done $1 billion in license. Before I'm dead, I'm going to live to be 127 with options for renewal. Genesis 6:3 really clearly says 120 is a minimum. So I said, well, I'll do 127 with options for renewal because I got the greatest wife in the world. And if you have a high quality life, you want a high quantity of life. And I can tell you based on telephone calls starting at 5:30 this morning before we exercise, it's amazing the amount of good that we're doing for people that don't even know us. I mean, because of podcasts, we're meeting people literally around the world. If I can do one little proof that stuff like Ask works, I'm talking in London, have no idea who's in the audience. You got 7,000 people in the audience you don't know. And this guy, we go on his podcast, the biggest guy in Europe, a guy named Bob Moore, he's now our dear friend, and he says, you goal shame me. I said, excuse me? I wouldn't do such a thing. He says, well, my teacher said you have 5 goals. I hit 4 out of 5, so I had 90%. I'm doing good. You said you start with 101 and you never cross the line. You had more, put down purple and victory, God's highest color, top of the electromagnetic spectrum, top of the rainbow. He said, well, last year because of you, I made $30 million, but I only got 30% of my goals. So he said, but you goal shame me. I said, that's the best goal shaming I ever
heard. That's not all bad, is it? That's not all bad. Well, you mentioned 3 C's. Can you repeat those again?
Yeah, it says you create. Now, if God spent his full time creating all that stuff before we came, the next part is you're here to contribute. God contributed everything to us. It's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So you got the whole deal. But then he says unequivocally throughout the Old Testament and the New, Malachi 3:10, as you know, says, I'll open up the windows of heaven, baby. We got a sky vault loaded for you. But if you don't give, you ain't going to get. And the way it works is like water. So everyone gets it. If you don't give, you're frozen. You're solid. You ain't doing nothing, being nothing, have nothing. If you start to give a little, you get ambient like water. If you really do the proportion 10%, which is voluntary, it's you're obedient because of what it does. People, in answer to your question earlier, why do I sell more books than anybody in the whole planet? Very simply, we tithe on every book. There's never been a book that we've done that we haven't tithed. And when we're out of trees, on one book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, 4th serving, we did 250,000 trees at Yellowstone Park. You drive in, it says these trees were, and they're all fruit trees because let's feed everyone too, because old Bob Schuller used to say anyone can count the seeds in an apple, only God can count the apples in the seed. One tree during its lifetime does 1,000,000 apples. We shouldn't have anybody hungry on the planet if some people start. And I just did a whole seminar for Asia saying we got to plant 1 trillion trees. One if you're born, one if you die, like in Israel. And if you ever fell in love and plant a tree, and if you're a serial lover, plant the forest.
I love it. And you don't know any of this. So I'm smiling ear to ear. And one of the reasons are, so we have 150 acres here, and we bought it in 2013 and completely regenerated. So it's a permaculture regenerative setup. We've planted over 500 nut and fruit trees, hybrid chestnuts. This is going to be a absolute Garden of Eden. It already is. It's just going to get better. So yeah, I can't imagine getting back to what indigenous and our ancestors taught us. I think it is 7 generations. I mean, this thing is going to producing. When we're long gone, it's going to be at its peak. And it's like, how fulfilling is that? So I so resonate with that. And the contribution piece, that tie the 10%, literally just writing this book, number 4, working on it Sunday. And part of what we're working towards doing, and I say working towards, we're doing it, and it's making the money clean. And part of making the money clean is getting back to the mindset that we were created to be. And what happens, I believe, is we get in this fight or flight reptilian brain, and it's in the sacral, right? In the root of where we come from. And in that fight or flight is where scarcity and hoarding and fear and these things come from. And we want to transcend that to abundance, which is what we were created for. So when you come up the chakras, you end up to the top, which is infinite DNA. Where at the bottom, it's sacral DNA. We want to get to infinite DNA, where we're transcending this scarcity to abundance mindset. And to do that, we got to heal the trauma. In my mind, is part of it. Gets heal that trauma so that we can transcend to get to the infinite DNA. Everything you're saying, where we get back to a gift economy. We show up to serve and we show up to give. So much wisdom that you've shared so far. And clearly, as you can see, it resonates with me deeply. What else on those lines comes to you as we're just sharing about the book Ask that, just feels right in the moment that you would want to share?
Right. Well, I think, we say there are actually 3 channels through which we all need to learn to ask. And those are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And each of those channels is equally important, Scott. The asking yourself part is that reflective journey. How do we know where to go when we don't even know where we are right now? So taking that time in quiet reflection with yourself to ask those questions, where am I now? What is my ideal version of my life? What does that even look like? And I'll tell you, so few people take the time to do that reflective asking, that asking of yourself. And then the asking others part is that bonding journey. You cannot do this life alone. None of us can. We are here to be a part of one another's lives, right? We all came from that source. We sprung out of that one source. And in some ways, we are all one. And it's talked about in scripture over and over again. But we tend to feel so separate, especially now, so disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand we're not disconnected at all. It's an illusion. So asking others, reaching out, even if it's just for feedback. I'm not saying you have to go ask for $1 million from somebody, but maybe you will. You never know. If you have a great idea, somebody may want to just support that idea. It happens every day. But, so asking others is that bonding journey. And then asking God really is the only way to connect yourself to the whole of everything that is available to you right now. So again, we live in this illusion that we're here alone. We're doing this alone. We're all by ourselves. We have no support. It's really just the opposite. We have everything inside of us right now. And so all we need to do is make sure that we're staying in touch, that we're asking God, the creator of the universe, creator of all things, what is the direction for me? And then listening, and it's so interesting when you start asking those questions, be prepared of yourself, of others, of God, your life begins to open up. And then the important thing is, to take action behind that. That's the third step. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what are the action steps I need to take to get there? Because we are in this physical world where we do need to get up off the couch and do something. And as we ask these questions, things will start to move. You'll realize something. A solution will come to you. Write it down, right? A plan will start to form. Dig in, go deeper, and you'll start to see your life change. And what we say, it's our book is called Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. You literally see yourself start to cross that bridge from those beautiful dreams in your heart to your destiny, to that ultimate destiny, which I think always continues to unfold because life is never finished. That's the beautiful thing. Life is eternal. Even when we're finished here, we'll go on eternally. And there will be more good to do. But we'll take everything that we've done here and been here, especially what we've been here, along with us. So why not be the greatest, the best we can be? And Mark and I just realized this was something, this simple word, ask, is so profound. It seems so benign, but it creates seismic changes in your life.
Yeah, no doubt. And we all are created and we all are one, yet have our individuality. And that's the piece that we're supposed to, in Creator's image, to fully be, which is why we were created. So be our unique DNA sequence fully, have fun, embrace this. And to your point of what you're sharing, ask, embrace it. Yeah.
Yeah, the ask, going along with what my beloved says, is that what does it look like for you at 100%? Like with us, we're total force multipliers for each other. When I was, after a painful, expensive divorce, it was dreadfully hard on me. I wrote down 267 things I needed in my ideal beloved and never thinking that I could find her. But the point is there's 8 billion people on the planet, 4 billion women. The chances are high that she existed and was already alive. And, so I put out my radar because what the Bible says in Habakkuk is write a thing and make it clear. Now, clear is definite, certainly biblically clear, and it shall be established unto you. So she was there before, she was obviously alive. And then all of a sudden, and then we synchronized in time and space. It's called teleological obtainance, right? The highest level of goal settings. And what you and I are talking about at the beginning is this transcendence where you go out of your, I say the hierarchy, and Mark's hierarchy is, self-awareness. What are you going to be, do, and have? Then you go to self-expression, then self-mastery, and then self-realization, where you're in tune with the infinite. So you and God are in a full communication. Like, it's going to sound pompous to somebody that's not where the three of us are, but I can tell that you are. We pray and meditate for an hour together every morning, and we say, hey, look, are we in alignment? Are we doing the highest and best? Are we sourcing and serving not only for ourselves, but for our family and our planet? And, we're politically deeply involved in trying to make the right things happen in a very short time. And because we've got 8 billion people that most of whom are suffering at one level or another. And there's no reason for any lack, any shortage anywhere. We're so deeply, profoundly thankful that you know how to ask for and create abundance, and you're helping people do that.
Well, you went right, and I'm going to want to let you speak, Crystal. You were getting ready to say something. So two things that come to me. One is, you can't make some of this up, right? You were just talking about it. So like literally, I have these Post-it notes all over the next door loft we have in the property, and this is exactly what we were. I forgot we had this podcast, okay? And so then I had a podcast earlier today, and one of the big takeaways that I had put on the Post-it note is this whole sacral DNA and getting to infinite DNA. And to do that, you need to heal trauma. So my podcast earlier today, I see this lady's name, never met her. And her, as I'm reading the bio, it says postgraduate training in trauma processing, neuroscience, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, and more. What are the 5 things she wants to talk about? To create sustainable wealth. How do you resolve wealth trauma and psychological evolution? And now here we are. You can't make this up. So yeah. I call it going vertical, and it's like each day and I meditate every day. I have for over a decade. And so one of the things I was going to ask you, I have my morning routine ritual I don't miss, and that's my time of going vertical to connect for the day, to get the inspiration, to get that connection, and do my best to maintain that connection then throughout the day, to show up in service and in giving. And my belief is every moment presents itself for you to lift it. So if I'm in tune with that divine connection, how can I see what needs lifted and don't need anything, but can show up whole and complete so that I can lift? So I was going to literally ask what that process of how people could remind themselves of the power of this simple 3-letter word. What advice or what do you do that you're just in a state of remindment of this powerful 3-letter word ask each day?
I think it's important to come into it with the reminder that you are a magnet for what you're getting in this life. So it's important to understand it and look around your life. And if you don't like the life around you, understand that you can change it. And you might be asking the wrong questions, right? And a lot of times we're asking things negatively. Oh, is this thing going to fall apart? Or, am I going to get sick? Or blah, blah. And these questions are actually setting us up for the wrong answers. So really pay attention to the questions that you're asking. And we love to say, Scott, make sure that you're asking from the nth degree of your greatest vision in your highest imagination, because, we are the only animals that God created with an imagination. Think about that. Every beautiful, amazing thing on this earth was created through someone's imagination, just like your imagination. That's the power. So literally anything you want to create is there for you. You just have to spend time in there and decide, right? And understand that you are the creator. You're expressing this experience. So go to that stage in your mind and stand there and say, look at that and say, what do I want? In the nth degree, don't play small. Don't say, oh, if I can just get through this month and pay these bills. Forget about all that. You don't keep taking your clues from what's going on around you, especially if you don't like it, right? So go to that place in your imagination and ask, what does that look like when I am living my perfect life? When I'm expressing my perfect career, my perfect relationship, who am I the question should be, who am I talking to every day in this wonderful career? What activities am I doing? What products, what services? How does that feel to my clients? And what is that interaction, that relationship that feels so magnificent to both of us? And you can do the same thing with relationships, but it's asking from that highest place in your own imagination that will just catapult you to a completely new place in your life. It's really magic.
It is. The whole thing is, first of all, the whole thing's perfect. And the whole thing is so magical. It's unbelievable that we're able to be on this journey and ride together and co-create into existence, literally speak things into existence. It's pure magic. So nothing but gratitude for that. And one of the questions that comes to me is, I like to ask myself, what are we here for? We're here to grow, right? And evolve and transcend and become. And so who do I need and want to become for my relationship, for this business, for all these different things? How can I grow from this situation? And what do I need to become, or what do I want to become? So that's a question I like to think about and sit with and meditate on.
I love those questions, and those questions really shape who you're becoming. That's the power of asking. You can't ask a question without the answers starting to flood back to you. So you're creating a new person every time you ask those questions. And those are beautiful questions. I love them.
If I may add to your questions, we did our questions. We say everybody got to go through the book with somebody else. There's 178 questions, and ask each other, and then write out the answers, and then keep doing that every month and talking about it. And you'll see how much you grow, because the size of your question determines the size of your result. So when I went, in 1974, I've been in graduate school with Bucky Fuller. I tried to be him, built the Wall Street Record Club, Botanical Gardens, but I ran out of plastic, and oil embargo hit then like it is now. And I said, what if I go bankrupt and I go to the biggest library, check a book out of the library? How to go bankrupt by yourself, because subconscious doesn't care. Then luckily I ran into this guy, Reverend Ike, and I'd gone to ministry, and he just wowed my soul and said, look, the Bible says, I shall not want. And I bought that in 1935. He's way older than I am. And we just wrote his biography called From Wishes to Riches. The point being that all of a sudden he said, hey, look, you can be wealthy. God wants you to be wealthy. And he had 26 Rolls Royces, 8 estates, 20 million followers, but it was a black marketplace. The point is, it doesn't matter what your color is, your age is, your sex is. If you tenfold the size of your question, you're going to tenfold the result, or hundredfold, or whatever you need, because then your mind will start thinking at a new level. And doubling, you'll stretch and work harder, but you can't tenfold unless you come up with a new you, which is what your questions were revealing just now.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Two things come in on that is, one, what you mentioned 10 times. Well, I'll back up. First, words matter. And you've been both very clear on that. I've even made a comment maybe a year ago, 6 months, whatever, but I caught myself because I was like, so many opportunities. And I said, it was sharing with someone in excitement. I said, I'm drowning in opportunities. Oh, I'm swimming in opportunities, because words matter. So even to that degree. And then you mentioned 10x. I love that. And I've heard it said, 2 times, and it may have been Dan Sullivan who said that, but the point was 2 times to 10 times. And from 2 times, yeah, you can do it. One, it's not as exciting, but more than that, you're bringing existing everything with you. So all of the challenges and the things that you're stuck on, you're having to bring with you to 2x. 10x, you can't bring any of that with you. So it frees up all the challenges to free up that thinking of how you really can 10 times. So I love that question. And that's it. Questions are it. Hence the book. Ask. I have 2 questions I always like to ask, and you interject whatever comes in and you feel. There's 2 questions I always like to ask, and either one, we can maybe split it up who answers them. So I'm going to throw them both out. That way you have space to say who wants to answer what. One question I always like to ask is, what's your earliest childhood memory of money? And the second question I always like to ask is, what is the best piece of money advice you ever received that you would want to share with the audience?
I love that first one. What is my first childhood memory of money? I remember sometimes my dad was a fairly successful attorney, but we were a family of 9 kids. So mom would get a little irritated, like, why are you spoiling these kids? Why are you buying them so much? And my dad would say, I want them to expect the best. I want them to understand there's no limit to what they can have if they decide to have it. And I remember hearing that, and I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do I want to believe that, we don't have enough and we need to limit ourselves? I like Dad's way better.
Yeah.
And I made a firm decision that I like the way my dad thinks on that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. That's great. But that's part of where you're at today too. And credit to your dad, because those things shape us. Right. And obviously we can heal the trauma and the past, et cetera. And those things really do shape us at a young age.
Yeah, totally.
So I want to answer the second question. Then I want to go back to the question before, if you don't mind, do both for a different reason that you probably don't expect. But first of all, when I was a little kid, I wanted a bicycle. My dad was born in Denmark, of course. My parents took us to Denmark. I got addicted to low handlebar racing bicycles. I didn't know he didn't have the money to buy what I wanted, but I had a picture on the wall, ride a wheel on Sheffield Steel. Ended up I asked myself, how am I going to do this? I'm a Boy Scout growing up, and it said sell greeting cards on consignment. I sold more than anybody else, became number one greeting card salesman, because the line he taught was pride of ownership only, and I always follows pride of earnership. You can have anything you earn. But see, we got a lot of people listening saying, well, the government owes me. No, the government owes you zero. God owes you zero. God already gave you everything. And all you got to do is take off the blinders. And I'll go back to the question on 10X. Here's why we got to do 10X, Scott. Our economy now is just current debt, 43 trillion, spelled with a T. Total earnings of all Americans is 21 trillion, spelled with a T. So we're half there. Except that entrepreneur and minimum 10X. Like, and if people don't know what exponential is, it's real easy. If I walk down a highway here and I take 30 steps, I'm 30 steps down the way. If I do an exponential, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 132, what happens is exponentially $1 becomes 132. Right now, we have 22 millionaires in America and 3,000 billionaires, according to Forbes magazine. If we just double that, we can pay off the national debt and not indenture the next 7 generations, which is one of the things you alluded to that's important. And how is that done? That's done based on mindset creates money set. Mindset creates future set. Personal choice to be all you can be. And what does that mean? That means a lot of the people that are listening say, well, I'm going to make $1 million and then retire. No. You retire, you just put on new tires and rewire and go in a new direction. And if you've got the competence to do innovation, invention, and creation, you're going to employ a lot of people, and everybody deserves to get employed until they can be self-sufficient, self-actualized, self-initiating to action. And yet intrinsically, everyone's got that. It doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you're going to finish.
I love that. And when we're done and hit the pause, I'll do my best to remember to talk to you about a docuseries we're working on. And it's specifically for business owners and entrepreneurs. It's the Infinite Entrepreneur Structure. I literally believe the goal with this is to have the impact of no matter what's happening financially, which we know, look at our debt, like you said, something needs to happen. Well, who gets us out of this? Entrepreneurs and business owners who are thinking from an infinite mindset, who are producers, not takers. That's what gets us out of this. So serving that community is what gets us out. So I couldn't be more excited about doing that and want to talk to you about that at some point.
Yes, sir.
What I would love to do is give you the opportunity. Your book is Ask. What would be your ask of either me or the audience listening to us today? What would be the ask that you would want to put out there to me or the audience? So
we would love for everybody to get a copy of the book. I mean, the value you get out of a $13 book is, a lifetime of wisdom. It's a no-brainer. That's why we read so much. But also, we'd like to invite everybody, Scott, to a free webinar that we've done. It's a free masterclass. If you go to askthebookclub.com, get the book, go to askthebookclub.com. We'll send you an invitation to the masterclass because we want everybody to keep moving. We have to. We need to keep everybody alive and vital and excited about everything we can create together. Just like you were saying, it's up to us. The government clearly is not going to solve our problems ever, but we will. Working together, learning from each other, and staying the course. So we'd love to see everybody at the masterclass and just hear their feedback on the book. And obviously it's on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, all versions.
Absolutely. Buy the book, gang. Obviously, for that price, you can see that they're showing up to give. For that kind of price point, for that kind of knowledge, there's nothing to think about. And then the master's class sounds fabulous. I'll join. We'll make sure and put it in the show notes and send it out to our community. Love supporting. I really appreciate how the two of you showed up in a spirit of service and in a spirit of giving. I see you both, love what you're up to, and look forward to connecting and moving things forward in a good way for all of us, because we are all one ultimately. So for the greater good of the whole, I love what you're up to and how you both showed up. So with that, thank you both, and Way to Wealth audience, thank you for joining us again this week. We'll catch you next week on The Way to Wealth, where we're all about making money simple, allowing you to focus on living fully and doing it today. We'll catch you next week.
The opinions voiced in Way to Wealth with Scott Ford, Managing Director, Partner, and Wealth Advisor of Carson Wealth, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Way to Wealth are not affiliated with CWM LLC or Cetera Advisor Networks LLC. Legato family is not affiliated with Cetera Advisor Networks LLC or CWM LLC. Carson Wealth, 19833 Leitersburg Pike, Suite 1, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742.